All right, well, I'd like to proceed and call this ad hoc budget committee meeting to order. Please join me in a moment of silence just as we pray for those victims and families of the terrible tragedy down at Todd Elementary School in Texas just the other day. Amen.
Amen.
It's a terrible tragedy, of course, and as I see those pictures coming across of the kids and their teachers, it's just makes you want to cry. All right, sorry about that sad note, but it is very sad. Well, we have a chock full bit of information about our budget process and some budget matters coming to City Council soon. So, Amy, I'm going to just call on you to take us away and have this presentation. And I think it's fine, given how long it is, if council members have a question along the way, that we'll pause, not to have a long drawn out discussion because she's got a lot to go through, but I'm just, you know, there's so much you might forget by the end of it all if you had a question along the way. So let's try to do it that way. So Amy, set us off.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I think I sent you the agenda. I don't know that we really need to go over it in detail here, but we'll just jump in if you're ready, which is our 2023 budget. Just real quick, I just put, are we ready? Because I'm not quite sure I am for the 2023 budget, but we'll get there. Our important calendar dates, July 8th is when all the departmental budget submissions are due. Council will have to receive the draft of the budget no later than November 22nd. First reading of the budget ordinances will be on December 6th, and second and third will be on December 20th. So it's a weird year again where we're actually doing second and third reading Christmas week. So just keep those important dates in mind as we move towards putting this all together. Monthly reports for April, expenditures for general fund and enterprise funds. Right now, we're under budget in most departments as of April 30th. IT is the only budget that's above target as of April 30th, but that's mostly due to timing of issues or expenditures, I'm sorry. Software renewals that we're doing and things like that, and purchasing computers, that type of thing. We kind of front load those things. So that's really, it's just timing. We're not worried about it being a trend or anything. Most of the departments are under target because of personnel savings. You know, we've had a lot of talk about that lately. Operationally, most departments are at target, if not a little bit above. There's a few that are slightly above, and that's HR, Parks, Public Service, and Recreation. HR, it's mostly due to additional recruiting expenses they've had in an effort to fill our positions. Parks is due to streetlights because there was a change in the fee that we didn't incorporate into the budget because we found out about it after the budget was done. So that's a lot of it. And then we've had some larger repairs at the ballpark that we weren't anticipating. Public service is overdue for a couple of reasons. Fuel costs, obviously, and there was an error in the calculation that was totally on us. The number of homes wasn't included. So for the year, they'll end up being over budget, but that's our error and it's not on public service at all. But we'll be watching that every month. And recreation is overdue to tennis instruction. They've actually had a lot of tennis instruction. So there are revenues to actually cover it. So there's more expenditures because they're having more tennis lessons, but the revenue covers the overage. So they're good there. That's kind of what it looks like. I've sent these to you also the other night. So if anybody has any, does anybody have any questions on any of that? Okay, revenues, tracking over target. This is the first year for business licenses where we have the new due date of May 1st. So our trends are off a little bit just because it's a different due date, but it'll normalize after that. But we're still tracking above target right now. State of South Carolina is mostly due to loss. census numbers impact the distribution of funds to municipalities. So right now it's hard for us to tell if it's due to economic growth or if it's due to population growth. And permits and fees are under target, mostly due to building inspections. I guess they were a little bit slower than we anticipated in this first 4 months. And fines and forfeitures are under target due to police fines, sorry. And that is what we're looking like. So state of South Carolina, that's mostly local option sales tax. Anybody have any questions on that? Okay. Enterprise funds are all tracking over target for revenues. Parking facilities was well above target after the first quarter. We had a really great spring break week for transient parking in our garages. So we're confident that parking revenues are rebounding. And the only one that's under is ballpark, but it's minimal, and we don't normally get revenue from them until the end of the year. So that's nothing to be worried about right now. Any questions on any of that?
So Amy, I would just note in kind of a summary that that's looking good to date. Of course, you know, the annual budget is a 12-month number, and it pretty well averages out, but it doesn't always, so we have to be careful. But you had expenditures under budget, almost 4 million, revenues over budget by almost 3 million, and then enterprise revenues over almost 2 million. So in rough numbers, that's $9 million to the good so far this year. The way I look at it is would that be accurate?
Yes, but it's also just 4 months into the year.
That's right. Yeah, it's early.
Some of it's timing. I don't know if you remember last year when we talked about this, but, you know, a lot of our departments were way under budget, and expenditures were normalizing a little bit better this year than we were last year. It just seemed kind of, I don't remember, we had a discussion about that we weren't sure if it was staffing issues, that maybe things weren't getting done, or what was going on. So this year it looks better than it did last year at this time in terms of us actually getting things done, or expenditure wise anyway.
Understood. Great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Amy,
Yes,
I have a question about the ballpark.
sure.
I'm presuming that's the Joe Raleigh ballpark, right?
That's correct.
So that income is based on what we are shared with on parking?
I don't know. It probably, because that's the only thing that we get from them. I mean, I have to look and see what that $1,000 is, Councilmember Shade, because typically we don't really see anything from them just yet. So let me look at that for you.
And I thought we made an adjustment with that at some point last year or the year before last. We got a bigger cut out of something beyond the parking. I thought we got a cut out of the concessions.
No, they changed. So we've changed that whole agreement. That's what it used to be years ago.
Okay.
I think in 16 or 17, I think it was 2016, we changed that. So it's like a lump sum number that they give us now. It's not based on concessions or turnstile attendance or anything like that, like it used to be. And then the parking revenue is also a lump sum number that I forget, it escalates over however many years.
Okay.
Kathy Mercer, do you have something to add? I see your hand up. Kathy? Maybe not. If so, just let us know. All right.
Mayor, Amy,
Yeah.
that money is actually, I believe, tied to reimbursements from Citadel Baseball for February and March use of the complex.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. Did you get that, Councilmember Shade?
Yeah, I heard that.
Okay, because we share expenses over there with the Citadel as well.
Okay.
Okay. Are we good?
We're good.
Okay. So we have some issues that are affecting or have the potential to affect our 22 budget. First being fuel costs. We've been monitoring this obviously as fuel prices have been creeping up and up and up. We budgeted $3.50 per gallon. So we've been obviously watching that. If you look on this on this spreadsheet, average price per gallon as of May 20th is $3.78, which is obviously above our $3.50 that we budgeted. So looking at right now, these numbers right here, in January, the average price per gallon was $3.07. February was $3.31. March it was $3.95, $3.99. And then as of May 20th, it's $3.78. We did get information for last week and it was $4.51. And so if we say that this week it's also, or next week it'll also be $4.51, our average price per gallon for May will be $4.44. So we're well above what we budgeted. If we stay right at the $3.78 per gallon that it is right now, or that we're anticipate that we're as of May 20th, we're going to be about $129,000 over budget. But we looked at it and just kind of how it's going. If we end up staying at $4.50, if it increases to $4.58 per gallon, which right now in May it's $4.44, so we're kind of anticipating a little bit more of an increase. We're going to be about $532,000 over budget. And so we're just monitoring and watching, and obviously it could be even more than that if the gas prices increase. So I just want to make you all aware of where we are with that.
Gotcha. Okay.
Does that make sense to everyone?
Yep.
There's not much you can do.
No, unfortunately.
Try to drive less.
So
Well-
that one thing that we said, we need to start asking the departments to implement some fuel consumption savings. We kind of look back to 2008 when we had a similar situation. And there's some things that we did in terms of looking at our routes and making them more efficient, idle time restrictions. We had the police department, the chief at the time had asked them to park their cars for 10 to 15 minutes and just get out and walk and better interact with citizens. That was one way to do that. And then, you know, we could also make sure that the take-home vehicles right now that we have out there are utilized by only those that really need take-home vehicles. So those are some options that we have. Any thoughts or comments on that?
No, but I do, as silly as it sounds, the idling really does burn gas. And if they can put back a procedure about not idling as much,
Mhm.
good luck.
Yeah, I know. Any-
Amy, let me ask a question.
Sure.
When it comes to, and this is not a joke, but when it comes to bullets, has the price, when they go to target practice and all of that, has the price on ammunition gone up? I mean, because of the supply chain thing, or is it insignificant?
I don't know specifically for bullets. I don't know. I'd have to double check on that. And either Deputy Chief Walker or Chief probably could answer that. They kind of order them so we have a lot in stock. I don't know if we've done an order lately. So I don't know if either one of you could talk to that.
Cassandra?
Or we can find out.
We'll find
Yeah,
out.
you can find out and
Yeah,
get
we'll find
back. I remember some
I'm-
time ago.
What was the question? I'm sorry, Mayor. What was that?
Price of ammunition, have y'all seen a big increase in it?
Well, we've not seen an increase in the price. The problem that we're running into is the
Supply.
Availability.
the
It's-
availability. Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
it's not necessarily a price impact. It's finding the resources to actually get the ammunition in. That's what we've been running into problems with.
Yeah.
It's a high demand.
And
Okay, thank you.
we've got one PO from 2020 that we actually had to push forward to this year, and we had to go to another vendor and the cost was actually cheaper with that vendor,
Yep.
but they could get it to us quicker. So we changed the PO so we could go with that vendor versus the other one.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Any other
Back to
questions on
Amy.
that? We good? Okay. The other thing that we were noticing is some increases from some of our contractors, contracts for a lot of it's supplies, it's fuel costs, everything. We had 3 requests in 2021, and I have a slide that will show But the approximate potential impact to the budget could be around $136,000 if we were to honor their requests. We don't have to because it's not part of the contract, but these are the requests that we've received. So Newton Fire and Safety Equipment, they've asked for an $8 increase on leather boots because their vendor had increased the cost to them. IPL North America, it's garbage carts. They asked for an increase because the cost of resin has increased and the impact could be $21,000. Yellowstone Landscaping, you see several landscaping or 2 landscaping services that have asked, and it's fuel and supplies and labor costs for Yellowstone Landscaping. Trident Waste also asked for an increase of 4%, and it's basically a fuel surcharge recalculation because of the cost of fuel. And they're asking for $11.18 per home per month. Right now, we pay them $10.75 per home per month. Ashbrit, this one was kind of an outlier because we would only utilize that contract if we were to have a hurricane where we'd need them to come in and help us with the cleanup of whatever happens. But so that's kind of an outlier. We don't really have a cost to that. And hopefully we won't have to utilize them anyway. Jennings Towing asked for a $12 per tow surcharge, and their reasoning was fuel. UniFirst was also $3, and that's a uniform company, $3 per week fuel charge per invoice. And then Capital Waste is our other garbage contractor, and they asked for a 2% fuel charge and an 8.5% increase on per home rate, which would bring them to $15.73 per home per month, and we're paying them $14.50 per our contract. And then another landscaping company is a 3% increase due to inflation. So those are the ones we've received so far. I would imagine we might receive more throughout the year. And if we would bring all of these to council for approval. Any thoughts on that?
Amy, let me ask you on any of these, are we in a contract where we don't have to do this, or?
You don't have to do that. They're just asking, they're asking for it. And I
Okay.
just wanted to bring it to your attention that we're starting to receive a lot more of these because they're obviously their prices are increasing too. So they're not making the profit obviously that they need to,
Right.
and just want to cover their own costs. So they're asking us to honor their request, but we don't have to.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Amy, I'm always bewildered when I get an invoice and they charge me with a gas surcharge, and why do people think they're entitled to that? That's the cost of doing business. I'm not paying their truck insurance. We don't pass it off to anybody else, gas surcharge prices, do we?
No,
No.
we don't really invoice people for that though either. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like we're not raising our fees for fuel surcharges. No.
No. I'm generally opposed to the whole concept that we should pay as a expense gas surcharge. That's just my 2 cents.
Mhm.
Amy, I agree with Peter on that, but let me ask about Jennings Towing. Is that something they would just pass through to whoever's car is towed? They asked for this.
Yeah.
They asked for this $12 from the city.
They did $12 per tow surcharge. Mhm.
I mean, I don't know if any of y'all ever got towed by Jennings before, but years ago, my father was in a wreck and the truck had to be towed. I got to tell you, man, at least that tow company was, they got a bunch of fees they charge. Let me put it like that. Okay. I felt sorry for the tourists who get caught up in that. But anyway, I just thought that would be something they pass through too. They're probably doing it both ways.
Probably.
To the person being told and trying to hit the city up. Anyway.
Yeah.
So like I said, we don't have to do this. We just want to make you aware because there is, they could start coming to you and lobbying all of you as well. So you're aware
Yep.
now.
Yeah, but when the fuel costs went down, they didn't come and say, you know what, we're gonna give you a little bit back on your contract.
That's very true.
Of
Very,
course
very
not. Of course not.
Just real quickly, I mean, I'm seeing these issues in my law practice, especially on the development side, and folks that have gotten themselves into fixed price contracts 2 years ago to build a home, and
Mhm.
look what's happened with price of wood and all these other things, et cetera. These are realities out there, right? That fuel costs have gone up. I mean, these are not like fake issues, but the way that these issues get hashed out between the parties is got to be handled carefully and methodically. And like, so for example, what do our contracts say with each of these different vendors? I mean, how is this anticipated, if at all? And asking for, information from these vendors to address some of the concerns that Councilman Waring and Councilman Shea had expressed about sort of letting no crisis go, uncapitalized on. We just need to vet this stuff carefully, and which I'm sure we are. I'm just saying that this is something I'm seeing all over the place these days, and I've also seen folks though use these dynamics to sort of, get an advantage as well under the guise of these issues. So anyways, just thought we ought to maybe take a careful look at our contracts on each one of these, and also to the extent we're entering into future contracts, now that we've seen what can happen in the market, we may want to adjust some of our practices to anticipate some of this stuff. So thank you all.
Let me say one other thing, Amy. I agree with everything Councilman Bell just said, especially if it's in the contract. Thursday, I went to a place used to be Jiffy Lube. Actually, it's in the district I represent, down by Best Buy. And they had been purchased by, I think it says Mobile One. I went to get an oil change. So when I pulled up, 2 car bays, nobody in the car bays, 2 guys up front. So I was going in, what was the office to, get a price on what it would cost to change the oil. And so the guy asked me, what do you need? I said, I need an oil change. He says, pull it on up. I said, well, first I'd like to know how much it's going to cost. Guy tells me that it's going to cost, a truck like that, this is a 6-cylinder truck. A truck like that is going to cost you, about $100, $115. And the second guy says, no, a truck like that is going to cost at least $125. So I told the guy, I said, hey, listen, too rich for my blood. I went right on Savannah Highway to Speedy, where I used to go. It was $45. So, I mean, that's just gouging what happened there. Decades ago, I used to change my own oil. I just don't feel like climbing underneath a car anymore. But, so I don't know how much of that we running into, but eventually the public's going to push back on some of this stuff and say, some of this inflation is real, and some of it, in my opinion, is price gouging.
That was so well said. I'm just going to say one last thing, and then I'm going to go on mute and maybe even turn off my video so y'all don't have to look at me. I think that these concerns that Councilman Waring expressed in the context of, an oil change company, is even greater for us, because I think and I'm not casting aspersions at any of these particular vendors, but I can imagine the perception being out there that, it's just the government. They'll pay whatever we invoice. They're paying with other people's money, right? In other words, they're not going to, I'm just throwing that out there for what it's worth. I've seen that in the private sector, in the private context with some of my dealings. And there's a lot of folks that are trying to use this current climate as an opportunity along the lines that Councilman Waring just talked about. And I know we're doing a good job of everything. I'm not trying to criticize anything, and I'm just throwing that out there for what it's worth.
No, but we are dealing with public funds, and when we get a surcharge on something like this, that's something we have to be aware of. It is public money, and we shouldn't just. It's not going to break our budget, but it does add up after a while, and we've got to be counting pennies sometimes. This is part of the issue we got to deal with.
Okay, the mayor's computer froze, so he's trying to come in by phones if we want to just hold on for 1 second. But Councilmember Pell, I will tell you that, the contract says they have to ask us. Basically, they have to come to us and ask for the increase. And we don't have to honor it, but they could also ask to get out of the contract too. So, you have both sides there. I think maybe the mayor's coming on now. So out of this conversation, we're going to say no and move on, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I'm not sure. Okay, so then the next is the ARPA funding. Sorry, Rick was texting me. Right now, total ARPA funds that we have not received the second tranche yet. We won't get that until mid-June, but the total amount that we are slated to receive is the $21 million number. All of the items that I noted in blue were things that we had already allocated back in 2021. And then the two at the bottom, in green, those were the 2022 budget items. Those are the items included in the 2022 budget, and then the grants to the nonprofit agencies that's also included in the 2022 budget. I highlighted in pink the repeal of the property tax increase because we are closing out 2021 now. We're getting somewhat close to doing that. And it looks like we had a pretty good year and we might not have to use that allocation, but I don't want to say that for sure until I get closer to closing out the audit. So that could be a potential additional $3.7 million that we would have. But after all of the things we've committed so far, we have about $6 million left. Any questions on that?
I like that we have $6 million left.
Yes. So in the state of the city, the mayor included his intent to commit $1 million for security cameras for the police department and also for sidewalks. And since then, the mayor has identified other funding needs for parks and recreation, specifically for ball field improvements and for tree pruning to help the city get caught up because we got behind on our tree pruning. And that would be a contracted service. And then additional funding for the water plan. We had budgeted $500,000 with ARPA funding in the 2022 budget, but the scope this was kind of a person change too. We had Mark Wilbert leaving right around the time that the budgets were getting put together and Dale come in. And so the scope is a little bit bigger than I think was originally anticipated. And then also funding for a Rosemont area water plant as well. And that estimated cost is $200,000. So all of those commitments would be $2.95 million. That would leave us a balance of 3.1. And then just talking a little bit about the commitments the mayor would like to include, the $1 million for the sidewalks. Our planning department has been keeping a spreadsheet for a year on requests for sidewalks. And right now they've taken that spreadsheet, they're vetting it and cleaning it up. Some of the areas the city's not responsible for would be more DOT and all that. So they're making sure that all the requests are actually within our city responsibility. And then they're placing a priority to those projects. It only includes new sidewalk requests right now, but public service has also been tracking sidewalk repair requests that they'll probably also add to that spreadsheet. And the total cost is well above the $1 million that the mayor would like to allocate. So that's just some explanation on that. For the police department, the $1 million, this is the detail to that. It's security cameras, and obviously I'm not savvy on any of this, so they are online if anybody has any questions. Video servers, the license plate readers, and other cameras. And then just to note, there'll also be a $200,000 minimum ongoing costs into future budget years for those items. Just stop and ask questions if you need to. And then the water plan. So I think you've all heard about the water plan and how it's kind of tied to our new comprehensive plan as well. But it's going to include current and future flood risk for all types of flooding, water detention, infiltration, storage, land use opportunities, current and future drainage assessments and needs, hydraulic basins and neighborhoods. It's going to focus on both of those. It will integrate projects, policy, regulatory changes to the city's investment in response to water risks. It will build off of the 1984 drainage plan, the 2020 hazards and vulnerability analysis, the Dutch dialogues recommendations, our updated stormwater management plans, and the 2021 city comprehensive plan. So it'll take all of that into consideration and will help ensure land use flood risk mitigation investment are viewed comprehensively and sustainably across basins, floodplains, neighborhoods, and across the entire city footprint. Original budget request did not factor in the full scope of the plan. So that's why we're requesting another $500,000 for that plan.
By the
Amy,
way, y'all, I'm back. I don't know if you missed me, but my computer just totally froze. It died, and it took me a while to get it rebooted. Sorry about that.
it's okay.
Councilmember Waring.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. How much is the water plan going to cost?
So we originally had the $500,000 budgeted already in 2022. This would be an additional 500,000, so it'd be $1 million in total.
So we actually hadn't put it out for bid yet to see how much it's going to cost?
We have.
No, I think
we have
I'm
put
sorry,
it
Mayor?
out. Yeah, we have put it out for bid. We've got I think 5 respondents, and the committee will be reviewing those submittals. I think next week they're starting on them.
You know, one thing, I mean, I'm for the water plan, but one of the things that kind of gets me, we go out and budget $1 million, and guess what? The bids come back in at 1 million, 1.1, 1.2, 999. So when, publicizing what we budgeted prior to getting bids on something like that, I don't know whether that's wise. I'd like to see what the bids are first, but I mean, having the money available, such that we can move on it, I'm for that. But I mean, just think about it. I mean, people that bid on these things look at our budget also.
Well, they do, and I appreciate that. And I mean, we've done the same thing for the downtown plan, the city redo of our zoning code. I mean, all those kinds of things we normally budget in advance.
Right.
But honestly, when Dale came on board and really wrote up the requirements, the scope for all we're doing with this plan, it was just way beyond what might have been originally envisioned a year ago. And we were admittedly trying to balance our budget last
Right.
year. So I think those two factors led to the reality that we weren't going to get the plan we wanted for 500 grand. It just wasn't going to happen.
Mr. Mayor, I'm agreeing with you on that. It's just that I think if we put it out there in black and white,
Yeah,
let's say it's going to cost 800,000. We won't get that bid if
I
we got a
understand.
line item out there for $1 million.
All right.
The important thing to remember is all the bids are back in now.
Okay, well, that is good.
Yeah, the bids are in, and I think the team that will be reviewing them have all of the proposals that are in, Councilman Waring. So they're not aware of this. They weren't aware of this discussion when they submitted their bid.
All right, well, good. Maybe we ought to keep that process. It just happened to evolve that way. Maybe we ought to kind of keep that process. I don't know. We'll open up those bids.
It is something to talk about, whether we can somehow, shield temporarily budget for a specific bid until we get the procurement done. But I don't know, you're always gonna then have to backfill it whenever you're short. So anyway, something to talk about.
I will say that when we have these types of discussions and we're specifically talking about, certain studies and plans, then yes, they know what we've budgeted, but if they're just looking at the regular budget, they're not going to see that because it's in a professional and contractual services line item that's not detailed out by each study or service that we're budgeting for. So
Oh,
it might
good.
be more when we're having these types of discussions that we consider it at that time, how we go about doing that.
Yeah.
So
Thank
this is Dudley, Mr. Mayor. So the only thing that's out there is the 500,000, correct?
If it's even out there, it is now because of today, yes.
Right, right. So the bids that we're getting in, and going back to Rick's point, they're not even aware of this discussion with the increase, I would assume.
No, but I think Councilman, they're aware of the scope. And so they're going to basically respond to what the scope was.
Okay. Thank you.
And it was one of these bids, it's not based solely on price. It's based on qualifications and other, scoring factors that the committee will review.
Okay, Councilmember Shade.
You're on mute, Peter. Council member, sorry.
Yeah, okay, I'm sorry. So also what's important is that this is a citywide comprehensive assessment.
That's correct.
We're not focusing just on the peninsula. So hopefully every one of our districts will benefit from this plan.
That's correct. It says across the entire city footprint.
Right. Let's get it done.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on. Rosemont, the city, the Army Corps of Engineers and the 3x3x3 advisory committee have met with the community to discuss that they have some concerns on the non-structural home elevations approach that the Army Corps has presented. Most of the comments the Army Corps had received in September of 2021 suggested a more rigorous attention to Rosemont's issues. And if you remember, the 3x3x3 committee came to council last November with a recommendation for a broader review of Rosemont's issues, which council very much supported. So this plan would be for that. It's the $200,000 for that plan that was discussed back in November. In addition, they're currently applying for grants for this. So there is a chance that we could get half of the money in grants, which would be $100,000, obviously. So we might not need to utilize, but we'd like to at least still put the full amount, allocate the full amount just in case those grants didn't come through. Any questions on that?
No.
All right.
Except that we'd be talking about 1.2 mil, right?
Yes, it's just, yeah,
Th-
two separate plans.
this-
And if you have any other questions, I had Dale's on here too.
This would be a separate procurement that
That's right.
maybe the same company or group doing the water plan might apply to do this review, but not, I mean, it's not necessarily the same, it'll be a different procurement. Isn't that right, Dale?
Yes, sir. The goal here is probably approximately $200,000 plan. We know very clearly we're in touch with the other applicants who are applying for grants and feel confident they will get them. So I don't think we would need this entire amount for this, but this would be a separate resilient plan for the communities of Rosemont and then Bridgeview Apartments, because they're both slated for non-structural if the Army Corps project would move forward, and trying to understand that. The procurement for the water plan creates an option for the city to offer this work to the people who get that water plan, who are selected for the water plan, if we deem them to be qualified, and then they could make us we could give them a task and we could negotiate a budget, but we could also procure it separately. So it depends, I think, who we would select depends on the quality of the water plan team and if they're capable of doing this other resilience work. Likely to be that would likely be the case, but it is not absolutely necessary that we would have to give the work to them.
Dale, just for clarification, then the water plan that the water plan, okay, would not be citywide if Rosemount and Bridgeview is not included?
No, the water plan is definitely targeted to be citywide, again, through the basins and the neighborhoods. And the resilience plan would be separate because it would be looking at more than just the water needs in this community. So again, these are foundation, as you saw with the 3x3 advisory community recommendations and other discussions, it was suggested that we do a full resilience plan for the Rosemont community, and that's what this would accomplish.
All right, thank you. Is that good, Councilmember Gregory?
Sure, thank you.
Yes, sir. All right, Amy?
Okay, we're good. So did I skip something? And then some potential additional options that we can have, that we have is, if you remember, for both the Hope Center and the James E. Lewis Incubator site, we had taken some funding away from those items to do some other things. So we're just suggesting that we put that funding back so that the Hope Center would be back to $1 million. The James E. Lewis Incubator site was $1 million initially, but we've gotten better cost estimates in from that, and it's including some equipment and things like that. So it was an additional 500,000. So we're recommending that we bring that up to 1.5 million. And then our Beresford Creek Bridge needs repairs, and that price has gone up exponentially. We actually need an estimated 3.1 million additional dollars. So we were recommending a half of the funding come from ARPA funds, and then general fund reserves could fund the other half. Any questions or on that?
I do, not so much on those, but out of any of this money, is any of it coming West Ashley for any improvement? I understand the police department helps everybody, but for example, some of the improvements along the Greenway, cameras, for example, Mr. Mayor, maybe it'll be another source, Amy, and another budget workshop that we can talk about funding for completion of the WPL waterfront park over there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, out of this 21, and I'm just throwing this out for discussion. I mean, we had $2 million tucked away, Mr. Mayor, for at least at that time, we think about improvements for natatorium. Because of COVID and the tight budget constraints, obviously we had to bring that money forward to, you know, help balance the city's budget.
Yeah,
right.
we
I mean, it was clear. What
Yeah.
a hard conversation. We needed it.
Right.
But now that we got some of this one-time money back, I think some of those dollars or some of this money, I'm not saying what project it should come from, should come back for some improvements west of Ashley. Certainly some of the monies that we had. We've got some things over there that really doesn't cost a whole lot of money in terms of, when you talk about finishing the Greenway and you compare that to the low line, I mean, the cost is minuscule compared to what the low line is going to cost. And, you know, you put $1 million on the Greenway and it is absolutely fabulous with that. That WPL park, you know, we've had an abeyance since, well, it's about 7 years now. It was bought under Mayor Rowley, because under your administration, $1.5 million was set aside. And, you know, 2 years was taken from all of us.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just thinking there's got to be a way, once we have a chance to sit and reflect, when I say we, all 13 of us, well, and obviously the finance department, to see where can we tweak to bring some areas. I mean, West Ashley, we're talking about just beautifying gateways, which isn't a whole lot of money. Gateways coming into West Ashley, you're talking about cutting the bushes so people can see the marsh, literally. That's not a major cost.
That's right.
So anyway, that's some of those
you,
things.
You
that,
jogged my memory because I sent Eric an email the other day and I didn't get a reply yet of how much of a request would there be for those items. But to go back, I mean, the police funding here is intended to be citywide. The sidewalk
Right.
money is intended to be citywide. The water plan is a citywide expense. So, I mean, there's
yeah, and I acknowledge all of that. Okay,
a
but when we start
good
getting into some of
bit
these,
of this, and I think I could be wrong, but Amy left us a little bit of of change. Might be on the next slide or two, and I was going to solicit any suggestions that y'all had for anything like that we might have left out, or like you say, some low hanging fruit that we could put 50 or 100 grand to and make a difference. We do have 100 grand, I believe, set aside for greenway improvements right now, and the Parks Conservancy knows that, and they're getting ready to spend it once we get done with our lease update with the Charleston Water Service. And the other thing I would mention, and I don't want to speak too soon, but we will have Amy tells me some little bit of 2021 reserves once our audit is done. And what I had hoped to do was look at some needs that are out there, not the big ticket things. We're not going to build a swimming pool, but
I know.
if it's 150,000 to put the lights in at the tennis center, or some smaller items that are off of our Parks and Rec master plan that we could go ahead and allocate some funding to, I think we'll be in a position to do that mid-summer.
Yeah, I agree with all of it. When you look at the International African American Museum is about to come to an end, so that's some pressure certainly on.
Hallelujah.
I know, and obviously Carl Richardson Park is beautiful. In another 60 days, I pray that'll
Right.
be finished.
Right.
And then obviously Stony Field is round the curve very well. I pass by there almost every Sunday. I purposely go by there just to kind of ride by and look. So those are three major, in particular, Stony Field and I am in particular.
Yeah.
I know our capital projects, people need some oxygen, but
Yeah.
I'm sure we can slip in WPL Park in there.
We certainly can move forward with the design of it.
Yeah, we already had $1.5 million tucked away.
Yeah.
All
I
right.
think that's honestly in the last year, there's been a capacity situation as well.
But it has. You're right.
All the things we've got going, and Edmond's been covered up with the museum and all like that. But I'm not making excuses. I'm just saying we got a lot going on.
No, you're right about that.
Yeah.
And they're down 47 staff members too.
That's right. All right.
Another thing that might be good also is to review our capital improvement plan, because, there's a lot that we already have put away for the Greenway, Councilmember Waring. So, it'd probably be a good idea for us to kind of go back through that capital improvement plan to see which projects are on there and funded.
That'd be great.
So we
That'd be
would
great.
kind of remember what's on there.
That'd be
Probably
great.
forgotten half of the things that are on there.
Yeah.
We've already got money set aside for them, and we just hadn't gotten to them yet.
It'd be a good to do a comprehensive kind of review of all of that once we get the audit completed and I know what kind of funding we're talking about.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Okay.
Big
I second that motion for the Greenway. Thank you.
Yeah. Great.
Okay, so if everybody's in agreement with the commitments that the mayor has put forth, and the other potential options that I just presented, we would have only $67,000 left, which the mayor said was little, but
I thought you had a little
But
more
hold
than
on.
that.
But hold on. So if we don't have to use that money that we allocated for the tax repeal, then we would have about $3.7 million. So we just
That's
need to
more
make
like
sure audits completed. And then we can decide what we would like to do that. There's some other things that have been mentioned for the funding for that, and that was a citywide facility assessment, which we've talked about in ad hoc for probably the last 4 years that we've not been able to fund yet in the regular general fund budget. And then Parks also would like a street tree inventory as well for, to help identify all the street trees that would help them do a better plan going forward for pruning and things like that. And then we could also consider some type of bonus for employees, but anyway. That's kind of where it's at.
Mayor, can we just talk a minute about the 1 million for sidewalks?
Yes, sir.
As you know, we've been trying to get sidewalks on Fleming for years.
Right.
And what the hold up has always been that, yes, it's multi-jurisdictional.
Right. We have a project getting ready to go with the county on that. You know that, don't you?
I didn't.
Oh, yeah.
Because I did know that the county only had a minimal amount that they would contribute, but there was a pretty large gap.
Yeah,
and I'm just wondering whether or not this million would help with that gap.
So we finally got our, we were due some payment from the developer there of all those apartments.
Yes.
And the county, as you say, they needed to fill a gap. And so we offered to put $100,000 match that needed to be spent in the neighborhood because it was tied to that development. And the county CDC committee or whatever committee it is, they authorize that. Now it's only going down so far,
Right.
But
right.
at least we'll show that we can get started on the thing. But the county's has that as an active project right now.
Well, yes, Mayor. And the commitment that you're talking about is a commitment that we had from those developers years ago.
Years ago, that's right.
But don't we have to do the drainage along Fleming before we go with the sidewalks? And if so, again, that would be multi-jurisdictional.
No, it's part of the sidewalk project. They gotta deal with that to put in the sidewalk. The commitment was actually for the traffic light.
Yeah.
And the DOT came back, even with the place built, and said that it still didn't meet the warrants, that they weren't willing to put a traffic light there. And that's when we were able to shift it to getting the sidewalk done.
Yes, and I'm just saying that the infrastructure that is going to be needed along Fleming as we move with the sidewalk improvements, and I know that it's limited.
Yeah.
It is going to require extensive infrastructure before we continue all the way down Fleming. And I'm just trying to find out whether or not there's been negotiation with regard to that when we talk about sidewalks.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, man. I'll leave it alone. But you know what I'm getting at.
I do.
All right, thank you.
We got to pipe a big ditch.
Yes, we do.
Councilmember Shealy?
Yeah, while we're talking sidewalks, I was hoping that Canterbury Woods would be on there as well. They've been asking for sidewalks for a long time, and I would hope that they would be included on that in Canterbury Woods. But and I know, of course, we've got our Parks and Rec master plan. I don't know how much of this extra could go toward that, but we obviously have a lot of people that we're talking tennis and pickleball and soccer fields and all kinds of things that a lot of that group's talking about as well. So
Santa's got a long list.
Yeah, I know, that's right.
But not many elves right now.
I know. I'm with you. And Mr. Mayor, this was something that was I guess 3 years ago. I remember you and I and Jason Kronsberg walked that West Ashley Park Island, and we haven't done anything with that, but it's a beautiful piece of property. And I know we were talking about putting a bridge there. That never happened. Bridge from the neighborhoods over to that island in the middle of Lake Dotter or two. But so if that could be considered, that'd be great.
Okay, gotcha. It seemed like there were some other issues there other than the money, but I'd have to revisit that with Jason. It's a beautiful place. Councilmember Shealy? I
I'm
mean,
good.
Shade, I'm sorry. You're on mute, council member.
You brought it up a few seconds ago. Some of these projects could be small and will bring almost immediate benefit to a community. And one of them is we talked about in Councilmember Shealy's Recreation Committee meeting on lights at some of these tennis centers. This is an ongoing issue for a lot of the folks who utilize these tennis centers. And if we can install these lights now before it gets dark again in the fall, you're going to make a lot of people happy with that. So if I could push that a little bit, it's going to be an immediate benefit. It's not a project place, but it's ready to go into effect. So if I could push that a little bit harder, that's where I'm sort of headed with this.
All right, gotcha. Yeah, I saw your email the other day, and I think we just got or expecting to get pricing on that. We had been working on it, but that's the kind of thing that, yeah, I'd like to think we could fund some of those things with our 21 reserves, or with the balance here. You know, if we roll back this property tax increase, we already rolled it back, but in essence, I think what Amy's saying is that we could use reserve funding for that rollback rather than the ARPA funds. Isn't that correct, Amy?
So I think our revenues are going to come in higher enough that we wouldn't have to utilize it, is what I'm saying. Yes.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
If I'm not mistaken, and correct me if I'm wrong, the lighting for the tennis courts have always been in the priority plans for budgeting, especially for capital projects. It just never reached the level for funding. I agree with you, Councilman Shade. We just need to make it the priority of the priorities, I would suspect, in order to make it happen, because that's been in the budget as a proposal for quite some time.
Yeah.
So to me, it's just a matter of us working with Laurie and her department for her to determine that that's a priority over another priority.
And so at Recreation Committee just the other day, I think, I don't know if Jason's still on the line or not on this call or not, but I think that was the next step for Jason and Laurie to work through that list and come back to the Recreation Committee with it prioritized. Isn't that right, Councilmember Shealy?
Yes, sir. That's correct. They're going to come back with a list. Yeah.
So by the time you have that meeting, we'll have a handle on this reserve funding and the rest of this ARPA funding, and then we'll be in an easy spot to make those decisions, in my opinion.
Thanks, Mayor. But on it might be different funds we're talking about, but another big issue in our Recreation Committee had to do with swim lessons. And of course, the problem was staffing availability.
That was more availability than
well, I mean, availability also goes with how much you're going to pay.
Right, I understand.
And I still think that we need to do a comparison of North Charleston and their aquatic center. We know that they're paying a little more, I think 20 cents an hour more or something than we are. But let's see whether or not that has made a difference in terms of their staffing complement in comparison to ours. I don't think Laurie had the data at the time when that question was raised, but it really would see whether or not that $20 cents more an hour makes a difference in whether or not we can staff up.
Right.
Councilmember Gregory, we do have all that information, including what the other area pools are doing as well that we can send out to everybody. We've been compiling all that.
Okay, appreciate it. Thank you.
Mhm.
And since the other evening, we've reached out to a few other folks, nonprofits that are staffed and doing swim lessons to see if we can work our citizens into somebody else's program or either basically borrow their instructors. So anyway, we're pursuing all options right now.
Good to hear that, Mr. Mayor. Believe it or not, I got a call yesterday from Ms. Barbara Dilligard, who
Yeah.
wrote for a grant, who I think 5 schools on the peninsula, and it was awarded grant money, and part of the enrichment during the summer was swimming. But she has a certified person to teach swimming, a young man. He's supposed to be forwarding the name and contact information. So I thought about Councilman Shealy and what we spoke about yesterday. So hopefully we will have somebody that we can hire to help teach swim lessons during the summer
Okay.
time. So
That's
she was,
great.
and it came from somebody, at least Amos Goodwin
Right.
was looking at our council meeting online Tuesday, and she knew about the grant that Ms. Dilligard wrote for, and she just put 2 and 2 together. I was so happy to hear about this young man who's looking for a swim teaching position.
Yeah,
That's great. Yeah, so
we'd love to
hopefully,
have him.
so hopefully the next either the day or tomorrow we have the name and contact,
Okay,
at least for
Good.
one person. Maybe he'd know another.
there you go. Everybody put the word out.
Okay, so when do we want to bring this to council, like full council for approval? Do we want to discuss this again once the audit is complete to allocate all of the funding at one time, or go ahead and bring the allocations we discussed here today if everybody's in agreement with them, and do the other parts of it later?
When do you think the
It's always
audit
easier
will
to do
be
it all at
done?
one time. I'm sorry?
When do you think the audit will be done?
I have to have it done by June 30th, so.
Oh, great. Well, we just wait till the audit's done. Then we'll be in a better position to know.
Okay.
Well, oh, the kind of related question, Amy, was, from our last meeting about the drainage projects and funding and that kind of, I would call it loose allocation towards certain things. I did want to go ahead and get official blessing from Ways and Means on those, particularly for Central Park drainage basin. So Matt is comfortable proceeding with, going the next step on the design work there. So let's try to bring that one forward in June council meeting, if that's okay with everybody.
Yeah, that's okay, but that still puts us, we meet what, the 3rd week of June?
Yes, sir.
Council? Okay.
Yeah, so we were trying to pull other, all that information back together and bring it back to ad hoc again. But obviously with as much as we had on this meeting, I didn't add that to this meeting. So I didn't know if you wanted, because you had all asked us to bring it back for a review. I didn't know if you wanted to do that first before we took it to council, or if you'd just rather go ahead and proceed.
I don't know, when's the next ad hoc meeting?
I haven't scheduled it yet, but I can do that.
We'll have some information, just thinking of by the time you have the next ad hoc, if it's before the Ways and Means, we'll know what the water plan, at least what those bids came in at. By that time, I think, wouldn't we know by then?
Yes, but I was talking about the drainage information.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I thought we had gone over that pretty well. If we don't have an ad hoc meeting before June 21, could we just send that around by email to everybody and have you review it and see if anybody's got an issue? And this is on the items drainage related from our last meeting. And all of those things, by the way, have to come back to council for approval. This is just kind of, setting so much for doo-wop, so much for Central Park, and it allows Matt to go ahead and get going with the planning and the design for them. Everything, of course, comes back to us when we actually get contracts.
Sure. Yeah, I'm okay with that, sending it around.
We can do that, Mayor, but just these are the projects that we would like to allocate drainage funds towards going forward and make sure everybody just agrees with that, with the projects. And then we'll have okay, we can do that.
Okay.
Okay.
So, but on these things we talked about today, like the water plan, just take that, for example, if well, I don't know if Dale would be ready to take that to a contract in June. Would we need to approve this 500 grand before we could approve a contract for the water plan?
We would need the allocation approved by council, yes.
Yeah.
Dale, do you know when you think you could bring that to the city council?
The selection committee is meeting, initial meeting is next week on Tuesday. I have skimmed the plans. I can see a couple really strong responses. I don't know if the selection committee is going to want to just select one or interview. I imagine it might be the latter. And so that could be scheduled generally. I've done this on the other side in a week or two, and the selection committee should have the ability to make a decision at that point. And then you have to negotiate contract terms with them. But again, July, it's not needed absolutely by the middle of June, let's say, but I certainly think by the middle of July it would be needed so we can get them under contract and starting to work. Does that help?
Yeah.
Councilman Waring.
Dale, who else is on the selection committee?
The selection committee has the two members of council are Councilman Boyd, Councilman Seekings, and then the selection committee is comprised of Robert Summerfield, Matt Fountain, Morgan Gunlock, Tracy McKee, and that's 6. And there's one more because we have 7. So we have an odd number. And then we have 3 advisors to the selection committee, and that is myself, someone from legal, and Catherine Drelay. She's representing the 3x3 advisory committee because that is something that they wanted to have a say on. And I will dig up the other name and post it in the chat. The one final selection committee member.
Okay.
Amy, go back to the list one more time.
So we plan to have a ad hoc meeting around June 15th. So that would kind of line up with what Dale's talking about, so that we could maybe finalize a lot of this, and then it could go to the July meeting but that's.
Yeah. Well, this first, the initial list, you got 6 million. This is half of it. I would respectfully ask that we go ahead and send this on to Ways and Means in June. I mean, I think we all concur that we'd like to up our police technology by $1 million and get the folks going on sidewalks. The other things aren't, huge money other than the water plan that we were just talking about. So, if y'all don't have an objection, I think it'd be good. Chief Reynolds is on the line for them to go ahead and know that this is approved, just for them to work on where the cameras are going to go and even to make it happen in this calendar year. I mean, by the time we approve it June 21, we'll be halfway through the year.
Mr. Mayor, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Let me ask this, though. We've had several soft conversations on, and I know Councilman Appel's been involved with that too, about putting cameras again on the Greenway.
Yeah.
And I would hope that would be included in the chief and his team's conversations. The reason I say that, you may remember several years ago, prior to Councilman Appel coming on, where they've had some people used to use the Greenway, as a getaway from breaking in people's homes.
Mhm.
As a result, we started conversations with council with at that time Chief Mullen, uh, and we just never got the coordination going between getting on the towers so it could beam across to Lockwood, get it on cameras and things like that. CWS has a concern about some of the various nefarious activity that occasionally happens on the Greenway. So while we're doing this, I would hope that would be included as well. It's not going to be a major cost,
Yeah.
but while we're doing it, I don't know, maybe you get a better price when they go out for bid. I don't know, but anyway.
Well, we got Chief Reynolds on the line, and I mean, they worked up this budget for $1 million for various different kinds of cameras. Maybe they have some thoughts about where they're going to go, but let me just say, Chief, are you hearing us? We'd like to see some cameras on the Greenway.
Yes, Mayor, and council members, it does include the Greenway. It does include West Ashley. Most of our current camera footprint is peninsula centric. And I'll just generally say our current footprint is our current system is aged. It is low coverage. We really don't have a much of a footprint compared to what I think this will provide. We have a very poor, I'll just say, infrastructure, which this addresses. Video management software and just being able to share the data more effectively and more efficiently. This will allow us to be more regionally connected to our partners. There's a lot of good things that is going on, just as an example, in North Charleston with cameras, and our people are coordinating with each other. And so we'll be continuing to share information and talk to each other regionally. And I needless to say, this is something that will help us with our efforts with violent crime and property crimes, and even some sensors and some things for flooding. And this is something that I think it really is a strong ROI. I'll just say return on investment. I believe this is a relatively low cost as we look at fuel costs, rising personnel costs, fringes, and all the things that go along with running a large organization like ours. This is a version of what I would just say smart policing. It incorporates the newest technology. It's not over the top, but it does incorporate other areas of the city, which has been raised just now, which is absolutely a core part of our plan and our approach, which up until now has not been the case.
All right. So that sounds good. Thank you,
Thank you,
Chief.
Chief.
Appreciate that. So we'll definitely be inclusive. Dale, did you have your hand up with another comment?
Yes, sir. I just wanted to, I couldn't put it in the chat. There is no chat here for me, but the seventh member of the selection committee is Ernest or Omar Muhammad, currently in the city's zoning planning, the zoning division of the planning department. He's the seventh. Thank you.
Gotcha. Terrific. All right. Amy, back to you.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that we're going to go ahead and ask full council, bring this to full council to allocate this funding here on this slide.
On this slide, and then we can wait on the rest of it till we resolve the reserve and the audit and come together with the parks and rec items that we can also fund through those other sources.
Okay, so we'll bring that to the June meeting, but we'll say it will be included in a future budget amendment. So we only have to do one amendment because doing several is irritating, if that's okay. Okay, so we're through that. Okay, now we have a couple of city partner requests that we've received. Roper St. Francis has come to us. It's regarding the senior centers. Obviously, both the centers suffered during the pandemic, and they had come to us and asked for us to help fund the deficit that they experienced in 20 and 21. Their total loss was around almost $345,000. You can see here, this is 2020. That's both Low Country Senior Center and the Waring Senior Center combined. I have information separately for each location if you'd like me to send it to it, but felt it was easier just to give you it in total. So 137 for 2020 and about 208 for 2021. So we met with them, I don't know when it was, a month or so ago, and they would like to share the cost of those losses with us at 50%. So our responsibility would be $173,361. Roper's board has already approved this plan. We could use ARPA funds for this. So if you're in agreement with that, we would add that to the allocation that we're bringing forth in the next meeting. Because I mean, this is kind of truly the spirit of what ARPA funds are for, right? So I feel like we could use ARPA funds to cover that. And then I was giving you a history of what our contributions to the senior center are. We have 2 separate agreements with them, and this is kind of how they were laid out. So we're working with them now to revise both the agreements to make them more uniform and relevant to what our duties and responsibilities are as partners. And it could result in a revised contribution amount. We're really digging down deep into what the city provides, like in kind, and what Roper provides in kind that nobody really tracks very well. So we really are working well with them to kind of really grasp exactly what each of us are doing and to capture that a little bit better. And we're also planning to have quarterly meetings so we're working better together, and we know that we can know any issues that are upcoming before it gets out of hand, basically. So it was a good meeting. I think we have a really good path forward with them. They're a great partner for us in running those centers. And I feel like this would be that's a fair agreement with them if everybody's in support of that.
Yeah, I'm very much in support of that. I will tell you that a lot of my constituents use the Waring Senior Center, and it is, I mean, it's a big part of a lot of the retired people in the communities that I represent are over there, and they do a great job over there, great service. So I'd be all for it.
Well,
Also,
I gotta ask the namesake.
The namesake is my dad, but anyway. Roper St. Francis does such a good job with both centers. The one on James Island as well as obviously the one here. Mm-hmm. And they pretty much shouldered these costs prior to coming to the city. And they were Amy, you may help me, but maybe I thought they were the first ones to say, let's split it in half. They didn't come back and say, well, listen, we like to get reimbursed 100%. I thought it was pretty big. I don't know about you, Amy, but I was kind of bracing for them to kind of almost ask for it all. But when they came back and made it, as we say, half-seas, 50%, I thought that was like going to Staples and pushing the easy button.
Yeah, I was surprised too, Councilmember, because it didn't seem like that's where it was heading.
I know.
And so when we had that meeting, I actually had to step out because that's when I had to get on a call for our hospitality revenue bond. So I had to step out. When I came back in, they were like, okay, this is what we decided. And I was like, great, this is good. Let's move on. So yeah.
Good. So yeah, that's good.
Good.
Yeah. And I think I've been saying from bad comes good. And with this, I think that's exactly the case. I think we're gonna have a really great, we've had a great partnership with them, but I think it'll be even better going forward. So it was a good meeting.
That sounds good.
Okay. So,
Councilmember Shade.
Yeah, obviously I'm going to support doing the.
No, I'm gonna sit right here.
Cassandra, can you unmute yourself, please? Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, so obviously I'm going to support this because of all the reasons that everybody else has just mentioned. But just remind me a little bit, what is our normal commitment for this?
It's right here. So for Low Country Senior Center from 2006 through current year, we contribute $20,000.
Okay.
And for Waring in 2022 is also $20,000.
Okay.
Of course, we supplied the buildings.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. So we contributed a lot, but maybe that's why our financial commitment seems so like a bargain, it's relatively low.
Remember, they also contributed the land and they put money towards infrastructure, bringing in the road, water, and sewage in there too.
Yeah.
So it's a good benefit for them. Obviously, people need to
Yeah.
go to the hospital. Which one do they think of first? Probably St. Francis.
That's right. Absolutely.
We hope they do.
Yeah.
I hope they do.
Well, like I said too, one of the things that came out of us meeting together too is those kind of in-kind things that nobody's really tracking. We
Right.
have our parks department that's out there doing things and there's little things that they're doing too that don't hit the books. And so that's why we're trying to get a better handle on all of that, and why I'm saying that a contribution amount could increase with that, just because of all of that as well.
Yeah.
But we're
Gotcha.
working through that. We hope to bring something probably around August, before the, so we can incorporate whatever it might be into the budget for 2023. Okay, moving on. River dogs.
Ooh.
Woof, woof.
This one's going to be a fun one. So the Major League Baseball has imposed certain upgrades to all the facilities for player health and wellness. And these are some of the things that they are requiring. More square footage in the clubhouses. It's supposed to provide a more balanced experience for the players and coaches, including meeting areas, dining areas, showers, lockers, training. They have minimum standards for whirlpools, training tables, washer dryers, kitchenette items, all of that. And currently, our current facility does not have room for all of these requirements. So it will take a substantial construction effort in order for these upgrades to be done. And these are requirements too. And they're supposed to complete these by a certain time. They get penalties and fines and all of that if they do not comply and get this done within a certain time period. And we're already behind in getting that done. But anyway, it's also requiring female clubhouses for female coaches and umpires. It has weight room minimum standards, batting cage minimum standards, dugout bench length. It's pretty detailed requirements that they have imposed onto baseball franchises. And one of them is field lighting, which at least we've already addressed that one, so we're good there. Right now, they have a very preliminary estimate of $3 million. They would like to share in the cost of the upgrades. They are saying that they will contribute $1.5 million to the project cost over a 10-year period, kind of like what we did with them with the clubhouse, where we paid $100,000 for 10 years for our $1 million contribution to it. So they're kind of wanting to do that with us, reverse. It's tied to their lease options. We just recently renewed, they recently renewed their lease with us through 2027. So they would like to pay $200,000 annually through 2027 for a total of $1 million, and then the remaining to be paid over 5 years at $100,000 per year should the club renew its last 5-year option. And if they do not do that, then they would pay us the $500,000 in one lump sum. Make sense? So the city would contribute the remaining 1.5. The one thing the River Dogs has said is they're only offering to contribute 1.5. So if there are any cost overruns, that could be that they're expecting the city to pick that up. The cost estimate, like I said, is very preliminary, and I think West Chapel is on here, who might be able to talk to this better if we have more questions on it, but he looked at it and he thinks that it's pretty preliminary. It didn't include like some HVAC, like moving utilities and things like that. So he's a little concerned that it's too preliminary to say that it's going to be $3 million. And we do know that they received bids in the range of $3 to $5 million. But Wes can speak more if y'all have some questions about that. Our agreement with them is section 3.2 and section 3.3. It said the club may reach out to the city about alterations or improvements, but cannot proceed without city consent and written agreement regarding allocation of expenses. And then 3.3 talks about professional baseball standards and any alterations and improvements to the ballpark that are required by professional baseball standards. And if we were to decline, they can ask for a variance from MLB. And then they have to inform us in writing of the determination. And if MLB were to waive or deny the waiver, and we refuse to make such alterations, and the continued use of the club without the alterations would result in the loss of the professional baseball franchise, and the club can actually terminate its lease. So that's kind of where we are with the agreement side of it. So it's a little ambiguous as to who covers the expense if the city agrees to make such alterations, because, you know, we are required to maintain the ball field. As you know, we have a lot of expenses, especially coming up with a field and the structural assessment that we had a couple of years ago. So right now, if the city agrees to make alterations, we would split the costs for this $3 million estimate. Like I said, the River Dogs have said they only will contribute 1.5. The mayor's recommendation is not to agree to cover any cost overruns, but ask if they also split any cost overruns with us as well. So that's kind of where we are. We need to put together an MOU with the River Dogs that will go to full council for approval. And if we go back to them and say, you know, we would expect them to split the cost overruns with us as well. I'm not exactly sure how they would feel about that. Not that that matters. I'm just letting you know. That's where we are right now.
Amy, do we know if any other cities that are going through this same situation and what their thoughts are?
I haven't reached out to any other.
I do know it applies to all minor league teams because Major League took them over, right?
That's right. It applies to everyone. I just don't know what other cities' agreements are with their leagues. So if it's the same type of agreement that we have, we could ask.
Every city's probably got a little different deal with their team, but they've all got to apply to these new specifications. Go back one slide. One thing interests me, Amy, we didn't really talk about right there. And I don't at all envision that we would ask for a waiver of everything, but I wonder if we could, in essence, between our budgeting and priorities, ask for a waiver for things that would drive the budget over $3 million so that we make sure we don't together spend any more than that. I mean, and I guess that, in other words, not ask for a waiver for everything, but I bet there's some things in the requirements that we're close or not that bad, or maybe get a waiver on some of it, not all.
And maybe Wes could answer that better, but there are some things like that they're going to just basically take the hit on that. They're not going to try to meet the requirements of the MLB because they know that they can't, or they just don't feel like the penalty that they would get would be substantial enough for them to worry about it. So they've already kind of called that back a little bit, Mayor, and the River Dogs would actually have to ask for the waiver from MLB, and I'm pretty certain that they won't ever get a waiver because these are our requirements that they have right now.
Yeah.
So.
Councilman Waring.
Hypothetically, if some of this, if they were to go out of business, what would we do with that stadium? If they say we want to go to another city, I mean, I guess we'd actively try to recruit another franchise or team or something like that.
Well, first of all, we have an obligation to the Citadel. So we'd have to maintain the stadium or it unwinds the real estate deal that put the stadium there in the first place. So I think we have to, that comes up first. So we'd have a baseball stadium, just depending on who would play in it, I guess, in addition to the Citadel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How many acreage do we know that comprises? I'm just, it might not be a bad idea. I mean, we got a lot of things to do, but begin developing a plan B there. I support them, but sometimes I feel like they think they got us over a barrel on some of this stuff. And it might not be bad to begin to develop a plan B.
I understand. I must, in their behalf, I must say, they did not ask for this. This was dropping in their lap when all that stuff happened with Major League Baseball. What was it, a year and a half ago now? This was not something that the River Dogs wanted. I can tell you that.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And you know, I remember from Saturday Night Live that famous, I forget what the comedian's name was, but he used to say, baseball has been very, very good to me. I really, I mean, I know Joe Riley was the consummate baseball fan, and I will never reach that level. But when I go out there and the families are there, I mean, it's just a great community thing. It's a shame these barriers come up and the cost of the field. I mean, it's expensive for us to enjoy that amenity, but it sure is nice.
Oh no, listen, that is the best buy for a family in
Yeah.
this town in the team. I mean, getting a ticket going to the, no, I'm a big fan of it, but just in case some of this stuff may be out of our purview, in particular, if Major League Baseball decides to reduce the number of farm teams or something like that. I mean, like I say, it wouldn't be bad to have a plan B. For example, when they had the soccer stadium over on Daniel Island, the land became more valuable than the stadium. Okay?
That's right. That's right.
And so if asked, where's the stadium now on Daniel Island? No way to be found. Somebody had a plan B.
It's 9.55 acres.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
But again, it's tied back to that agreement with the Citadel. It was their property, apparently, when the city cut the deal to move from College Park over to build this new stadium. So it's not like we can decide, even if we had another home for baseball and wanted to build something else there, it's not that easy because of our agreement with the Citadel.
Yeah, but those
Councilmember
things
Shade.
you negotiated.
Councilmember Shade.
Yeah, thank you. So, yes, we've got to make sure we support the River Dogs for all the reasons that you and Councilmember Waring just mentioned. It's a great amenity to our community. There is a difference between what our obligation is for regular maintenance on this property and what MLB is sort of shoving down the River Dog's throat, right, Amy?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so, I mean, this doesn't sort of fit into a nice square hole right now for us, but we do need to support them, obviously, for them. And I think the bigger question in my mind, Councilman Waring, is that this stadium is up to, is it 25 years old, 30 years old? And the other question I think we need to find out from them is what is going to be the more greater maintenance need that we're directly tied to with this property at some point. Because I just know that I've got a feeling that there's been a lot of deferred maintenance that will fall under our obligation at some point with this. So we need to be, I agree with you, we need to be planning for the future, but the future may be not if they leave, the future may be what are we going to the hook for other upgrades and maintenance that are our responsibility.
So Councilmember Shade, we actually have that information because it's on us to do it. So we have that information.
So what are we looking for down the line then, Amy?
So Councilman, if I could step in here, this is West
Yes,
Chapel. So we've already completed, we had an assessment done a few years ago of the stadium from, looking at maintenance for the future. We've already completed 2 phases of that, which was the fire alarm system and the electrical upgrades there. We were looking into doing structural repairs next. Some of those items will be covered or part of this upgrade per the MLB because some of the areas they're proposing to build these new spaces will be underneath the stadium, which is where the structural repairs would need to be made. So, you know, we were trying to account for some of those items as much as possible as part of this project and looking forward. So the main ones coming up were structural repairs.
And what is a price tag on that ballpark-ish?
I mean, it's a few million bucks. I mean, it's kind of hard to put a number on it now.
Come back again.
Sorry, there's some bad feedback there. I mean, it's hard to come back with that exact number to date. You know, we did this a few years ago prior to COVID, and we had a total value number on what we thought the construction costs were going to be back then, but we have not reevaluated since the increase of cost through all levels.
Councilmember Gregory?
Yeah, Wes, didn't we do something pretty extensive a couple of years ago because the field was sinking?
Yes, we did. And that's a total separate item. That's something that's typically that we've done at that stadium every around 5 to 6 years.
And what is the cost on that? I mean, I'm getting back
I think
to
last time that was about $1 million. It was handled by our capital projects group.
Yeah, Councilmember Gregor, we do that about every 5 years with the field.
all right.
All right. Any further thoughts or suggestions about this little conundrum?
The other question, Mayor, is this. So we're talking about $3 million. What happens if there's an overrun?
Well, that's what Amy pointed out, that they wanted us to cover any overrun. My recommendation was to just kind of flatly say, no, we weren't willing to do that. And either we got to control the expenditures to cap at 3 or in my view, get them to agree at least to split it with us, you know, beyond that. I don't think it's reasonable for us to just say in a blank check fashion that we'll accept any cost overruns.
Oh, I agree with that.
I agree with the mayor's recommendations on this one.
I do as well. I as far as those numbers before COVID, man, those things are out the window. If it's a $3 million number pre-COVID, we know it's going to be overrun.
The number brought before from the River Dogs is a number from this year.
Yeah.
I was speaking on the estimates that we had for maintenance costs, not facility upgrades for the MLB.
Oh, okay. I got you confused, and I thought you were saying this $3 million figure was pre-COVID.
No, sir.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I agree with the mayor's proposal on this one.
All right.
So we will go back and you know, continue to negotiate with them. I just wanted to make sure you all were aware of what was going on with that, because we're getting kind of behind the gun in order for us to get some of those requirements done. So anyway, that's where we are, but we'll go back to them and continue to negotiate.
All right.
Okay. Now, other issues that we're having, the insurance reserve fund. So we've been having some struggles with our insurance reserve fund. So they no longer insure seawalls, retaining walls, or docks and pier. Well, it says structures that anchor or connect a dock pier to land, which basically means it won't cover our docks and piers either. And it impacts approximately 25 city structures. They never communicated this to us, which is great because now our docks and piers are not insured. So we have been working with a private insurance broker to help us find the insurance coverage. We have a quote from an appraiser for that appraiser to go out and inspect all of the structures and provide us with replacement cost. And then once that work's completed, we'll work towards obtaining insurance policy. So just wanted to let you all know that. So that will be an additional insurance cost to us because we're having to go out and get separate policies. And then,
Amy,
yes,
are we able
sure.
to get that in place before hurricane season?
We're trying very, very, very hard to do that, Mayor. Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Sure.
Let me ask a question, please. I didn't realize, Peter, not picking on you, but does your homeowner's insurance, do you have insurance on the dock at your house?
Yes.
Oh, you do? Okay, because we have a property, and plus it's further out, but we could get insurance on the dock. We basically had to self-insure. So, be interesting to see what those premiums are.
I gotta, you asked me that question. I had to hesitate and think about it, and I gotta think when I'm paying for it. That you brought it up.
Yeah.
I will tell you that some homeowners policies exclude structures over water. So
Yeah.
some include, some exclude. Sometimes you can have your policy endorsed where you can add that coverage. It's pretty expensive when that's the situation, though.
So the other issue that we're having is our historic city building appraised values. They appraise every 5 years. They did their most recent appraisal in 2020, right in the midst of the pandemic. And they drastically reduced the valuation of numerous properties of ours without justification or notice. We've been fighting with them on those reductions and have been successful in getting the valuations increased, with the exception of these 5 properties. And of course, they're our most important properties. I shouldn't say that all of our properties are important, but historic. The City Hall, the Gary Yoder Center, my building here, 116 Meeting Street, not that it's mine, but the building I sit in, and Dock Street Theater, and then Fire Station 2 and 3. So if we're not successful in getting the property evaluations up to where they should be, we might need to obtain appraisals and purchase excess liability coverage in order to make sure that we have proper coverage on the buildings. So that's something that we're looking into. We're also having some concern on our most recently renovated buildings, specifically Fire Station 6 and the Daniel Island 10 Center, because we feel they'll probably not value those appropriately as well. This is the first time that we've ever had this happen with the IRF. We can only speculate that perhaps they're trying to lower the risk after multiple years of storms. But they don't have a problem continuing to increase our premiums. We were assigned a different account representative, I think in 2019, and it hasn't been a pleasant experience. It's super difficult working with them. With the IRF, it's an all or nothing situation. You either have to use them for everything they offer or nothing at all. So that's kind of where we're stuck. If they don't offer a product, then we're allowed to go outside to a private market, like we had to do with our liquor liability policy, and now what we're having to do with our docks and piers. So we did engage a private insurance broker who presented to us and provided a quote, and we could save some money on casualty insurance. However, property insurance would cost up to 3 times more than what we're currently paying with the IRF. So staying with the IRF probably is our better option right now, because they can just offer lower premiums because they're subsidized by state funding. But we're just going to continue to analyze and determine the cost benefit of this and see where we are. So I just wanted you all to know where we stood with that.
This is Dudley. Is it still sort of June, sort of the cutoff when they sort of are stop writing insurance policies, hurricane and flooding and all that stuff? Isn't June the date that it becomes more difficult to get insurance coverage?
It might be, Councilmember Gregory, I'm not sure. This was kind of just a surprise to us, so we've been scrambling to get as much information and get what we can right now. I don't know that the broker we worked with, and maybe Matt can answer that, if they've had any discussion about whether it might be more difficult now that we're coming into hurricane season. But
Yeah, Amy, that was never mentioned.
okay. But we can inquire more about that, Councilmember Gregory.
Thanks.
So I'm just curious about the Gay Yard. It's a relatively new building. What did they have it appraised at before, and what did they move it to? Do you know?
Yeah, I don't have it in front of me, Mayor. I have to send that to you, but I have both of those numbers.
Yeah.
We can send you for those 5 buildings. We can send you all that information if you'd like.
I just out of curiosity, I would like to see them. That, I mean, who in there, who believes that building, particularly buildings in good condition, which I mean, don't get me wrong, we have a little deferred maintenance here and there, but we generally keep our buildings in good condition, and the Gilliard brand new. Who would believe that the building value is going down in the last few years here in Charleston?
Yeah, and so 116 City Hall and the Dock Street have all had renovations as well. So
Yeah.
Anyway, and we're hoping to do a renovation at Fire Station 2 and 3, depending on grant dollars coming in. So
Yeah.
anyway.
Okay.
Okay. Then now we have 2023 potential budget impacts. So this, I just want to talk to you all about whether we want to consider doing community assistant grants in 2023. Because if we are going to do that, we need to get moving. We'll have to advertise and get applications on the website by the end of June, because the grants would have to be to us by beginning of August in order for us to get them into the budget cycle. This is kind of the history of the grant opportunities that we've given out in the past, the full dollar amount. You'll note in 2020, it decreased drastically just because of state law requirement of funds given to nonprofit organizations. And then, of course, that's the full budgeted amount that we gave out. It was actually, we ended up cutting that in half, if you remember, because of the pandemic. So I just wanted to talk with all of you about that. In all honesty, with some of the other needs that we have, I'm not exactly sure how we can fit this into the budget for 2023, but I wasn't sure how you all were feeling about that. It's kind of it's a hard one.
We help a lot of good organizations through here, including, I mean, we talked at length the other night about the Heirs Property Group. You know, I don't know what other, we might have another opportunity to help somebody like that if they're providing direct service, I guess, but still, I don't know. I think we just wait till later in the budget year to make a call on this one.
Well, we can't though, Mayor. That's my point, because we have to have the application process. Yeah. So that's why
I don't guess you want to have them apply and then tell them later on, oh, sorry, we're not doing it next year.
I think that would probably make people unhappy if we did that. Yes. Sorry,
Exactly.
my leg is so still.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work on staff too to do that, and then not do it as well.
Yeah. But you'd still be able to do the hospitality or accommodations.
We would still be able to do accommodations. Yes.
Because that comes through a different pot of money.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. Any strong feelings about this, y'all?
It's a tough one. I know, like you said, we help a lot of good groups, but God, if we can't afford it, I mean, then we're hurting ourselves, but it's a tough call.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
I agree with it. It is a tough call, Councilman Shealy, but after I saw that human resource study on non-sworn, sworn personnel, if you thought we had some tough budgets in the last two, I mean, to hold on to our people and be able to attract some vacant position, you got some serious work to do on increasing compensation for people that work for the city.
So I have some slides on that if you want to hold on this for a second. So we kind of move into that talk, then we can come back to it if you'd like. So HR committee met on May 12th and received the following information. I summarized it way down, but although we did do a significant pay adjustment this year in 2022, it has not yielded the results we hoped for. We figured that it wouldn't help us hire new people, but we were hoping that it would at least help us keep people. It hasn't. So that's been very disappointing. Our staffing levels continue to decrease, and exit interviews indicate pay is as basically the primary reason. Recruiting continues to be a challenge for most positions. Salary survey indicates that we have room for improvement in all pay grades and ranks in the city, with the exception of our police and fire chiefs. This is our staffing levels. You'll see FD sworn is in red, blue for police, and then white is non-sworn. So it's not good. And then if you stop me, I'm just going to kind of go through, but this is our annual turnover for 2021. We were when we talked last year towards the end of the year, we were going through the budget. I think we were anticipating a 22 to 23% non-sworn turnover rate. It ended up being 25.58%. So it was higher than we estimated. And then this is total turnover through April of each year. So you can see, 2021 last year in April, fire was 1.74. They're at 4.68. Police was 1.96. This year they're at 3.69. City non-sworn was 6.84, and we're at 9.49% already just after 4 months of the year.
So we're tracking on 28%, basically the same as last year
Mm-hmm. Looks that way, yes.
for non-sworn.
That's right. And so this is the compensation survey results that HR have presented. If you look at this column here, it's just base pay results. We're at like 50%, we're at like mid of all of the survey participants. So we're at 51%. With the cost of living factor, which we included, we got from MIT, basically that living wage, where we're way down towards the bottom. So 69% of the survey participants pay more than we do when you factor in cost of living. And you'll see that all of our St. Andrews PSD is higher than us in both sides. And this is non-sworn, I'm sorry. This is just non-sworn. For sworn, this is the base pay results for police and for fire. And we did just base pay average and then at a bachelor's degree level as well, just to give you a different perspective, basically. So we're doing okay with police, fire base pay, and then also for cost of living, or I mean bachelor's degree level. We're a little bit better for bachelor's degree level in the fire department. And then this is with the cost of living factor for sworn. We're okay, bachelor's degree level for police. And you can see for fire, we kind of fall down for fire when you're considering cost of living.
So Amy, if I'm reading this right, we're below on fire for a lot of categories.
Yeah, we're. So I was saying, like, we found where we could improve in pretty much every pay grade and every rank in the city.
For both police and for fire.
Yeah, police is a little bit better than fire, but yes.
Yes.
If you look at base pay, I mean, bachelor's degree level with cost of living, we're kind of, there's like 23% of the participants pay more than we do, whereas fire, you have 42% that are paying better than we do. Do you get what I mean?
Yes, and you look at some of the cities that y'all have surveyed. Like, we like to compare ourselves with Savannah a good bit, and we're behind them on a lot of categories. And then even looking at the PSD, St. Andrews PSD, North Charleston.
Yeah, not for police and fire. That was more for
non-sworn.
Non-sworn. But with fire, we are below Savannah for both.
Rock Hill, Durham, would slightly better than the city of North Charleston.
Yeah, we're better than our counterparts around here, but it's the others that we're
Our
not.
cost of living is what
A
eats out.
factor.
Yeah.
When Ryan was doing the comparison, our cost of living is actually higher than Hilton Head now.
Yeah. So this is not taking into consideration the cost of living part of all this.
So
Yes, it is.
yes, so this one is with the cost of living, and it's based on the living wage that the MIT reports, this right here. So you have that for non-sworn, oops, sorry, I went too fast. This column right here, this column right here is with the cost of living factor included. And then for,
We'll go down. So go back to that one more time.
okay,
And we're at 69 percentile.
right, that means that 69% of the survey participants pay more than we do.
When you consider cost of living.
Mm-hmm. And 51%, if you just
You're
look
right
at
in the middle if you don't.
Yeah, that's right.
Neither one of those numbers are good.
No. Okay. Can I move on? Yes?
Yep.
Okay. So in looking at this, HR looked at if we wanted to be in the top 1% of pay and the top 10% of pay amongst all these survey participants, or in the top 25%, this is what would need to happen. So non-sworn would need 45% pay increase. Sworn would need 20 to 30%. It just depends on the rank because every rank's a little bit different. And the estimated cost would be $40 million. 10%, these are the numbers. Non-sworn would need a 37% increase. Sworn would need 15 to 25% depending on the rank, and estimated cost of $31 million. And then top 25%, non-sworn would need a 22% increase. Sworn would need 5 to 15%. And the estimated cost is $17 million.
Neither one of those figures are cheap.
So then they also kind of looked at this to show you. So where we would end up either in just base pay or with cost of living. And so I'm just gonna stick with the cost of living factor. The 1%, it would keep us up with Hilton Head, City of Durham, and City of Fayetteville. If we did the top 10%, then we would be right in with Savannah, Rock Hill, Myrtle Beach. And then if it was 25, we'd be Raleigh, Wilmington. So that's where we kind of would be right here, Savannah and Rock Hill for base pay. Mount Pleasant is higher than us. So that's non-sworn, okay? And then, well, I guess I didn't include the sworn. I guess maybe we didn't have one. Anyway, that's where it would put us. But that's the price tag, depending on what we do. So
even if you stepped it, I mean, aspirational, we'd like to be number one, right? But when we're way down the pack now, you make the step-by-step approach to try to get to the top 25% is, moving up to the next rung or two. And even that's $17 million addition to what we have budgeted this year for payroll expense, correct? That's what we're saying.
That's right. So yeah, in 2023, we would have to budget $17 million to make that happen.
Yeah.
How much?
17
million, just to get us in the top 25%.
So Amy, but next year, is that the year that the Gateway TIF district burns off, or do we collect TIF money from that next year as well?
In 23, we'll still get TIF dollars because I think it ends towards the end of the year. So it would probably be 24 would be the first year that we would see that money coming back into the general fund.
Because don't we get like $10 million a year from that or something?
Yeah, nine or 10, yes.
When that burns off, y'all, that TIF money, of course, will no longer be spent it on capital projects, but it will come Of course, only the city portion will though, won't it?
Yeah, so I was gonna say, I'd have to calculate the portion of each because it's the county and the city. That's both, So I'd have to calculate out what the.
Probably
city
only
portion would
4 or
be.
5 million
It
then.
wouldn't be, yeah, it wouldn't be the full 9 million.
That will go to the general fund rather than to a TIF account, but I was thinking it was more, it'd only be like 4 or 5 million. But that's 4 or 5 million.
So that's kind of where we are with salary information.
Well, we've got to make some adjustments and we've got to make some moves towards us sooner or later.
So that takes us
Do
back to
do
community.
you have any ideas where we could find 17 million?
Well, the stormwater portion will come from stormwater. We can probably find that pretty easy. But yeah, I mean, it's all from the general fund. There's not a whole lot of options that we have, Councilmember Gregory, for that.
Hey, Amy, I've got a quick question just off the top of your head. What's the value of the current loss credit?
What do you mean, the value?
So like we're given 100% of the loss credit
Yeah,
back historically, like how much credit is that? And what were to happen hypothetically if we were to eliminate the loss credit? How much money, how many millions of dollars would that reap?
Kathy, can you help me? I just don't have the number in my head, Councilmember Appel.
That's okay. I mean, it could be an estimate based on like prior years when we looked at it, just ballpark.
To keep what we're legally allowed to keep.
Right. So if we were to like drop it to 0% or to 50%, like what are we looking at dollars wise on that?
We did some numbers on
We
that
did.
last year, and it seemed to me like half was like $6 or $7 million. I could be wrong. That's just fuzzy memory. I think if you captured it all, it ought to be double that, but that might have been the 75%. But I bet Amy could pretty easily look back at.
Yeah, I can look at that. I was asking Kathy, but her microphone is broken. So can I get that to you later, Councilmember Appel?
Oh, sure. And I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I just think that as we're, confronting these staff issues, retention issues, pay issues, we need to have all the options on the table because as we all know, and as we've all lamented, we don't have that many options. I mean, even if we were to max out another millage increase, we're not getting anywhere close to $17 million, right? Based on my understanding of how those numbers work. So, I mean, if we want to, there were a lot of comments at the council meeting on Tuesday about trash getting picked up and, lifeguards being paid and firefighters that come to our meetings every meeting. I mean, this is it. I mean, this is the game here. I can tell you, the owners of Major League Baseball aren't paying it. It's on us, and I just think we all need to have a look at that. And last thing I'll say on the loss credit issue, if we could dig back up a comparison of some of our other jurisdictions in the area to sort of compare and contrast what they do, I think that would be helpful for us as well as we begin to put all the cards on the table and make the wisest decision we can.
We'll get all that to you.
Did we go through that? We went through that the last time, didn't we?
We did.
That info should be available.
Yeah, we can update it and send it out.
Okay.
And Amy,
Yes.
the other graph that you showed us with the LOST funds also reflected how our millage remained low because we applied 100% of that to our taxpayers, which was a very important and significant graphic to reflect how we keep our millage actually down by doing that. So when we do a millage increase, the impact of that millage increase is blunted, if not negated, by making sure that this money is 100% refunded to our taxpayers. So as we go through the comparison, and we want to put all the cards on the table, that's one of the cards we need to make sure that's in front of us as well.
So yeah, I think we get that to you every year. So we can update it for this year and just send it out a little bit earlier than what we normally do.
Yeah.
So you can have it early. So that comes back to community assistance and what we want to do with community assistance.
Yeah, I
It
mean,
makes it real easy. Makes it real easy.
I was about to say that before she went to those other slides. Okay. Case shut.
Okay, so I'm hearing that we're not going to go ahead and do an application process, correct?
That's right.
Amy,
Yes.
mistaken too. There were some concerns, legal concerns about the community assistance grants in how they could be, I mean, who could apply and things like that. Didn't that come up a couple of years ago?
Yeah, see the big drop? I don't know, Rick, if you can.
Yeah, I see that.
See that big drop? That's what that was. That's why that happened.
Thank you.
Yep.
Amy, let me ask a question. I guess go back to the rollback of the property taxes, you know, if we got the offer money and all of that, you know, the whole thing was to pay our people so we wouldn't lose our people. And from looking at those charts, I mean, that's the second time I've seen them. As you said, it didn't work.
Nope.
So, will we give ourselves somewhat of a head start? I'm just talking out loud. Will we give ourselves somewhat of a head start if we kept the property tax level where it is, as opposed to rolling it back and then having to come back with probably an increased millage rate, you know, for 23 budget. In other words, I don't know that when you look at these charts, well, I guess you could say if we didn't do what we did, it might have been 35% turnover in non-sworn people. In other words, it would have been greater.
Or it might be too early to tell.
Oh, you got a 26% turnover rate. That's 1 in 4 people leaving.
And when did the raise go into effect?
January 1.
January 1?
Well, it was a first full pay period in 2022. So it would have been probably the second pay period in 2022. The second pay check in January.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I mean, it'll be interesting to see if it continues down. It probably will, but perhaps at a different rate once it really kicks in. I don't know.
Yeah,
I
but
don't
when
know
it gets
that-
to the point to where I think we all start with the men, all of us. I know I have. But when that trash doesn't get picked up, you get immediate response from from constituents, and in particular, trash debris in particular is there for a week or two before it gets picked up. I mean, we got a problem. I mean, it's no one's fault. On the other side of this COVID piece, proper personnel and compensating them is a serious issue, and we got limited tools to take care of it.
And the labor market really changed dramatically in a year's
Correct.
time.
Correct.
I mean, we thought we were doing so good, right?
Mhm.
And it just, in comparison to what happened with the market, through no fault of our own, we really put a good faith effort. I mean, it's not every day that we agree to raise 3 mills, right?
Right.
So,
So Amy, looking at this, realizing if the number is 17 million, what would be your best advice to us when it comes to the rollback and what we're probably looking forward to August and September as we, roll up our sleeves?
That's my
on the
question.
budget?
That's my question.
Yeah, we've cut back so much, even like operationally with the departments too, that they have so many needs in terms of getting work done too. But I think our focus has got to be on this pay increase, because we're not like we don't have people, we're not going to get the work done anyway. So I think that has to be our main priority, that we have our normal increases that we have, our fact of life increases that we have no choice about, and we have this pay increase, and that's it. Like, we go from there. And we look at those other options like we have every year in terms of, I think we haven't gotten the information from the state yet regarding the our cost of our millage bank information. You know, we did that increase last year, so I'm not really sure what we would be able to do with a tax increase anyway. And then looking at local option sales tax like we have, and just trying to piece it all together.
This is just tweaking, but you know, we had to make the adjustments to the policing on King Street. I don't know how many more, you know, officers are now in the, what I call anyway, the entertainment district. I know in some years past when we needed, again, this goes back to Chief Mullen days, but when we needed to add, I don't know, I think it was like 8 officers to increase presence at that time. It came out of tourism dollars as opposed to the general fund. I'm thinking we probably got more police officers now than we did back then. Again, that's just tweaking around the edges.
That team.
Excuse me?
We're accounting for all the officers that are assigned to that team right now with hospitality fees.
Oh, okay. Well, you're ahead of me on that then. Thank you.
Amy,
Yes.
I think the other consideration, we've got to take care of this pay issue, because the other consideration is this. Every time we lose a firefighter, we have to replace them. And the cost of replacing a firefighter and bringing in a new class, I forgot what the numbers are, but they're astronomical. And then the other issue is when we're short of police and fire, and we pay overtime for those who work a different shift, that overtime pay also eats up a lot of our budget as well. And then finally, not to mention that and Chief Courier brought this up at our last public safety meeting. The other issue we have is we're creating a vacuum of leadership gap as we're trying to promote from within the experience and years of service men and women have. We're losing that, and that's a huge gap. So it's not just the dollars and cents that we're dealing with; it's also this institutional knowledge that we rely on heavily for the advancement of the leadership roles that these firemen and police officers have. So this is a multifaceted issue that we are wrestling with. There's no question that we've got to tackle this with at least being in the top 25%. I mean, and we got to find the money somehow to do that. And this is when we have to roll up our sleeves and just look deeper into what may be or may not be available. And all options are on the table, obviously, for this.
And I would argue with Councilmember Shea that that's for every single, it's non-sworn too. We're losing institutional knowledge and non-sworn, and it costs a lot of money to train people and bring people in. And when you have a revolving door in certain positions in certain departments, it's even worse. So that's a systemic problem within the whole entire city. Yeah,
I don't mean to single anybody out, but I just know that the cost of a firefighter training is a lot more. Yeah, but you're right.
You'll note, Councilmember, that our turnover rate isn't nearly as high with the sworn officers than it is with the non-sworn. And interestingly, if you break out the two, our wages are more competitive for fire and police than they are for non-sworn.
Right.
So that's a lesser incentive for a firefighter working for us to go to Mount Pleasant, because we're really comparable, if not better. You follow me? But the other thing that kind of struck me in the head listening to Ryan's presentation was just the flexibility of the job market and the profession, that if you're a firefighter, unless you want to leave the service and go do something completely different, you're basically looking at other jurisdictions, and most of them have comparable pay. Now, if you're a truck driver, right now, you could go from maybe $18 to $28 an hour and go from the public sector to the private sector, and they're paying a heck of a lot more. Or I just think it's interesting that might have been a factor for our non-sworn employees to be so mobile right now, or leaving us in such numbers, because the opportunity to earn more money for them, particularly if they're talented, is there's a bigger differential than a police officer or a firefighter looking to go from us to another city department. Does that make sense?
It does, but the
Yeah.
number that Chief Courier gave us was that place about 100 firefighters on board. That's almost 25% of of our sworn officers. And if you also look at the numbers, Mayor, they're not necessarily going to our other local agent partners. A lot of these men come from outside of the Tri-County area, a lot of them out of the state. And so a lot of them are returning back home because our training is so well. So it's not just looking at what Mount Pleasant is paying or North Charleston is paying. It's looking at it on more of a regional level. And you're right. I mean, the numbers for the sworn are better than the non-sworn, but still, it is a serious issue that Chief Courier brought to our attention. On all of this. I mean, it's got to be addressed, and it's going to be very painful. I get that.
I said then, and I'll say now, all of our city employees deserve and need to make some more money in today's market. There's no question about it.
Yep, hands down, all of them, every one of them.
Amy, when we do across the board salary increase, doesn't that advantage public safety considerably?
Okay, so when we did this last time, because they have a totally, both police and fire have totally different pay plans than the rest of the city, and they're structured completely different.
Yes.
So we have to push, like we did last year. It was an entire push through the whole entire pay plan of non-sworn because of compression issues and things like that we have to take into consideration through each pay grade. So that's why it's so costly to do it. With police and fire, they have different steps, and they have the ability they have automatic step increases built into their plans, which will give them a 5% automatic increase, which nobody else, like the non-sworn, do not have that option. So it's a little bit different, Councilmember Gregory, because of their built-in steps and their ability to get education increases and CEP steps and things like that within their pay plans.
So it does advantage them because they're gonna get a raise anyway.
They will. So, they get a person. We would probably do it the same way, depending on what we do with their pay plans, because I know, especially with fire, there's a push to change their pay plan. So depending on how those are restructured, I'm not sure how that'll look. And I'm not sure if they're also wanting to do anything with their pay plans. I think we would probably recommend some changes to theirs, but over the next couple of years, maybe, to kind of clean these up a little bit, I guess. But what we did is just provided, like with all the department heads, we got a percentage increase and a lower percentage increase than everybody else in the non-sworn pay plan, and gave that same percentage to police and fire because they have the ability they have, like I said, those automatic steps of 5%, and then where they have the education incentives as well, so that nobody else gets. And so that's why those were structured that way, if that makes sense.
It does. Thank you.
Well, y'all, Amy, did you have anything else? We've gone on a ways now. It's 5:30.
Yeah, I just had, the only other thing was the Hope Center that y'all, you approved the other day for 2022, because we are going to be taking over the operations of the Hope Center. And I just want to make sure that that's going to flow into the 2023 budget, and it's going to be about $107,000. But just so you know, that's another impact for 2023. And then also, you know, if there's contract price increases, fuel costs, supply costs, all of those will affect 2023 as well. And that was really all I had. Like I said, you'll get a meeting request from me for the June meeting. And then if you have any questions, have a happy Memorial Day.
I think that's about all our brains can handle at one sitting. Y'all
Yeah, it was a lot.
have a happy Memorial Day, everyone, and please do some piccolo and some spoleto this year.
I hope you feel better, Mayor.
I am. Thank you.
Good.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Everybody have a good weekend. Bye-bye.